living an IOU life in a UOI world, and kind of the same thing. It's not about you. It seems like, to me, another subtext of this is I think there's, if I'm not misunderstanding, there's kind of two meanings to the UOI part. But say more about that. Talk to me about what this means.
Well, that came to me a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and I wrote it down. I've got a whole chart basically that I've developed, and it means something to me. It may not mean anything to anybody else. But I looked at the world and I'm going, okay, what is it that yeah, um, the world culture today is backward. Okay, we have an attitude of UOI. Okay, you owe me,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. Okay, and what's that mean? It's okay. Um, in with that kind of a attitude, it's very the finger is pointing back towards me. Everything points back towards me, and so and with each of those, so you unfair, life's unfair. Okay, I deserve this. I deserve da da da. It's about me. Okay. Um, oh, offended. I get
Mm.
offended at whatever somebody says about something. Da 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 da. So I'm always on the edge of. Okay, again, points back towards me. Okay, so life's unfair. I get offended, and then I want whatever I want now. I want it immediately.
Mm.
So I immediately.
Mm.
So, you know, I don't want to wait. I deserve this now. It's all of it's kind of a it's very a self-absorbed um, attitude. So it's not about mentoring. It's not about serving. It's not about it's everything points back inward. Okay, where from a biblical perspective, what are we called? I mean, it was if we look at Christ, it was IOU. What do I? And did he really? No, he didn't. But his attitude was IOU. Okay. Um, and for me, it means okay, I'm outwardly focused. I'm not focused on my needs or my wants. I'm focused on how can I best serve those around me, starting with my wife and my children and my colleagues and my friends and my church, and how I mean it's very much outward. And so you know how can I be intentional? How can I be intentional in what I do for you, what I do for Lisa, what I do? How can I be intentional with my actions? How can I take ownership? Okay, ownership is a big. I know we talked about this earlier this week. The
Mm.
word ownership came up, and a lot of times we don't want to own our emotions. We don't want to own our decisions. We don't want to own whatever, unless it's convenient for me. Okay, and I say, okay, so so how can I personally take ownership?
Mm.
One of the books that we are required to read at the office, Extreme Ownership. It was a book that I read several years ago, and I gave a copy of it to David. And so I don't know if he had read it, but all of a sudden
Mm.
it was required reading for everybody because it was just such a great book on taking personal ownership of your own life. Um, and then how can I can talk about it. I can have a lot of intent, but do I have urgency behind actually doing it? Okay.
Mm.
So we can talk about a lot of things, but do I actually? It's like a lot of times, it's like I can look at my wife and go, you really look beautiful. But does that thought come out of my head and from my head out of my mouth? You know,
Yes.
and it needs to. You know, I can have a thought of, okay, I need to do this for this person.
Mm-hmm.
And you can write it down and make it a task, whatever it is. And then it can sit on your task list for 6 months,
Yeah.
And, and what you've lost is I think, urgency. is really a sensitivity to the Holy Spirit speaking,
Ooh.
going, "Hey, do this." You know what? You know, make that phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Smile at that person and give them an encouraging word. You don't know what you do not understand what that may do for somebody. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so acting. So the IOU is very outward focused in the world.
Mm.
So does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love the double meaning there because the very basic like IOU, UOI, like the selfish versus
Yeah.
outward in
Uh-huh.
that very much like um, the literal like IOU type of mentality, but then also that background of in a world that's unfair, offended, and wants immediate satisfaction. Being the I is intentional, right?
Right.
Take ownership, and the U being urgency. And I think seeing the world like you're saying, where it's very backwards, and flipping that literally in the acronym and also in the mentality
Right.
is beautifully crafted. I got to be honest. I think that's like a very effective way to teach something like this because it's really easy to say something that turns out to just sound like whatever you see people doing, do the opposite, and that doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
But if whenever you can put steps to it, to be intentional in what you're doing, to take ownership over those actions, the good and the bad.
Right.
I think that's a really, really
Right.
big piece that people miss.
Yeah.
Is they love to take ownership when things
Yeah.
go well.
Yeah.
But I think the part that builds character, builds strength, and allows you to be, to just grow in general, become more intentional and more sensitive to the urgencies of uh, of like building around yourself, other people outside of you, is the ownership of the bad stuff, basically.
Well,
The things you mess up.
yeah, we we miss out on a great opportunity to grow and learn when we don't take ownership of our failures. Okay? Because what happens is we tend to repeat those failures over and over and over again if we don't take ownership of them and we don't learn from them.
Mm.
We learn more, I have learned more in where I have and I don't like the word fail,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Because I think it's got a the connotation of it is you big loser, but but so I don't like the word fail.
Mm-hmm.
Where you've come up short, okay,
great
where you
reframe.
have not performed to your um, um, to your best,
Mm-hmm.
okay. We only fail when we don't get up and try again.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Failure's not fatal. Failure's not final. Failure is just a step in the learning process if we allow it to be.